When my brother sent my 15-year-old son to a wilderness therapy camp without my permission, I thought he was trying to help. 3 weeks later, Marcus came home 20 pounds lighter, with scars on his wrists from zip tie restraints, and eyes that looked through me instead of at me. "He needed discipline," my brother said. "You were too soft." My mother nodded in agreement, arms crossed like a judge delivering a sentence. "Boys need to be broken before they can be men." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. Instead, I documented everything with the same precision I used in the operating room. And then I dismantled their lives piece by piece, starting with the one thing they valued most: their carefully constructed reputations. Let me rewind. 6 months earlier, I'd made the mistake of asking for help. Marcus had been struggling. Not the normal teenage angst, the eye rolls and slammed doors that every parent expects. This was different, darker. Anxiety that made his hands shake when he tried to hold a pencil. Depression that pulled him under like a riptide, making a straight-A student stop caring about homework, stop caring about friends, stop caring about anything except the 16 hours of sleep he could escape into each day. His father, my ex-husband Daniel, lived in another state with his new family. The family he'd started 6 months after our divorce was finalized, with a woman he'd definitely not been seeing before we separated. He sent checks twice a month, regular as clockwork, and called on Marcus's birthday with the enthusiasm of someone completing a mandatory work task. Money instead of presents, checks instead of showing up, so it was just us. Me working 70-hour weeks as a trauma surgeon at Seattle General, saving lives while watching my own son slip away. Him sinking deeper into a fog I couldn't penetrate no matter how many therapy appointments I scheduled, how many medications we tried, how many times I sat on the edge of his bed and begged him to just talk to me. I was terrified. More terrified than I'd ever been facing a patient bleeding out on my table. Because at least in the OR, I knew what to do. With Marcus, I was drowning, watching him drown, and had no idea which direction was up. When my brother Jonathan called offering solutions, I was desperate enough to listen. "There's this program," he said. His voice smooth as consultation room leather, practiced and confident. "Wilderness therapy. Structure, fresh air, no phones to hide behind. It changes kids, Rachel. I've seen it work miracles." Jonathan was a corporate psychologist, the kind who got paid 6 figures to tell executives how to optimize their empathy while downsizing departments. He had credentials covering an entire wall. A podcast called Resilience in Modern Life with 200,000 subscribers. A TED Talk about overcoming adversity that had been viewed 4 million times and that my mother watched on repeat like it was scripture. In our family, he was the expert on the human mind. I was just the surgeon who fixed bodies, who dealt with the mechanical parts, the bleeding and breaking. Not feelings. Never feelings. "I don't know," I said, staring at Marcus's closed bedroom door. It was 2 p.m, and he'd been in there since yesterday evening. "Marcus isn't. He's not defiant or violent. He's just sad. So desperately sad. Rachel, listen to me. I've seen hundreds of cases exactly like this. You're enabling him. All the therapy, all the accommodations. You're teaching him that the world will bend to his feelings. He needs consequences, accountability, real-world skills. Let me handle it. This is what I do." The word enabling landed like a diagnosis, sharp and clinical. Maybe I was. Maybe I was so busy trying to keep him comfortable, trying to cushion every fall, that I'd forgotten to make him strong. Maybe my love was suffocating him instead of saving him. Jonathan sent me brochures overnight. Glossy publications full of photographs of teenagers hiking mountains at sunrise, their faces glowing with health and purpose. Kids smiling around campfires, learning to build shelters, conquering rapids. Testimonials from grateful parents who'd gotten their children back, who'd watched transformations they'd stopped believing were possible. The program was called New Horizons Wilderness Therapy. It looked expensive, professionally designed, legitimate. Accredited, or so the brochure claimed. Jonathan said he'd cover the full cost. $28,000 for 6 weeks. Family investment, he called it. We look out for each other. I should have asked why. I should have asked what he wanted in return. I should have researched beyond the glossy brochures, looked for reviews, checked credentials, trusted my instincts that were screaming something wasn't right. But I was drowning, and he threw me a rope. So I grabbed it. Marcus left on a Tuesday morning in June. I'd told him it was a summer camp, a therapeutic wilderness program that would help him feel better. I'd shown him the photos of smiling kids. He'd looked at me with those tired eyes and said, "Okay, Mom, if you think it'll help, that if you think destroyed me." The trust in it. The resignation. I thought I'd hear from the camp regularly. Updates, progress reports, maybe even a letter in Marcus's handwriting telling me about hikes and campfires and feeling the sun on his face. Instead, there was silence. Complete radio silence. When I called the first week, they said, "Family contact disrupts the therapeutic process. Trust the program." When I called the second week, more insistent, they said, "He's doing great. Really engaging with the process. We'll let you know if there are any concerns." When I called the third week, demanding to speak with my son, they said, "Dr. Carter, we understand your anxiety, but you need to step back and let us do our work. Your son is exactly where he needs to be. Trust the program. Trust the expert. Trust the family." 23 days after I'd put Marcus in that van, another van pulled up to my house. The door slid open and Marcus stepped out. I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight, maybe 20 pounds he didn't have to lose. His cheekbones jutted sharp under skin burned dark by sun and wind. His hair had been buzzed down to nearly nothing, stubble on a skull that looked too angular, too exposed. His clothes hung loose. The camp-issued cargo pants cinched tight with a belt. But it was his eyes that stopped my heart mid-beat. Flat. Empty. Like someone had reached inside and turned off every light that made him Marcus. He looked like soldiers I'd seen in the trauma unit, the ones coming back from places they couldn't talk about. "Marcus?" I moved toward him, arms reaching. He flinched. Actually flinched away from me, his mother, like I was a threat. Behind him, Jonathan climbed out of the passenger side, grinning like he'd just delivered a miracle wrapped in ribbon. "See, I told you. Look at him. Totally transformed. You can thank me later. Transformed. That's one word for it." Destroyed was another. Marcus walked past me without speaking, without making eye contact, moving like someone who'd learned that existing was dangerous. He went straight into the house, up the stairs. I heard his bedroom door close. Not slam, there was no anger in it. Just close, soft, final, like he was sealing himself away. "He's quiet now," Jonathan said, leaning casually against the van like we were discussing a successful business deal. They taught him respect, structure, how to control himself. "You'll thank me later, Rachel. Give it a few days. You'll see the difference." I stood there on my own driveway, pulse hammering in my ears like surgical monitors flatlining. What did they do to him? Exactly what he needed. Discipline, routine, natural consequences for natural behaviors. They broke down the defense mechanisms and built him back up properly. What does that mean? What are natural consequences? Jonathan's smile didn't reach his eyes. It never had, I realized. In 43 years of knowing my brother, I'd never seen warmth reach his eyes. It means he learned that actions have results, that the world doesn't bend to accommodate feelings, that sometimes you have to suffer to grow. He's stronger now, Rachel. More resilient. You're welcome. He drove away before I could form another sentence, before I could grab him by his expensive collar and demand real answers. That night, Marcus didn't come down for dinner. I'd made his favorite, chicken parmesan with garlic bread, the meal that used to make him smile and ask for seconds. It sat on the table growing cold while I stared at the ceiling, listening to the silence from upstairs. At 8 o'clock, I couldn't take it anymore. I went upstairs and knocked softly on his door, my knuckles barely making sound. "Honey, can I come in?" Silence stretched so long I thought he might be asleep. Then, barely audible, like he was afraid the words themselves might be punished. "Okay." He was sitting on the floor in the dark, back against the bed, arms wrapped around his knees pulled tight to his chest. The posture of someone trying to take up as little space as possible. The lamp on his desk was off. The only light came from the hallway behind me, cutting across the room in a weak yellow stripe. I sat down next to him on the carpet, close enough to touch but not touching, giving him space. "Do you want to talk about it?" He shook his head, a quick, sharp movement. "Did they?" I had to force the words out. "Did they hurt you?" A pause that lasted forever. Then, moving slowly like his joints hurt, he pulled up his sleeves. Both of them. Purple bruises circled both wrists in perfect rings, the kind of marks that told a clear story. Dark in the center, yellowing at the edges. Old enough to be healing, recent enough to be vivid. Underneath the bruises were cuts, thin lines where the skin had broken. "Zip ties," he whispered, his voice mechanical, empty of inflection. "When you broke the rules. They'd restrain you, hands behind your back, sometimes to a tree, for hours. Sometimes overnight if the offense was serious enough." My stomach turned to ice. The surgeon in me cataloged the injuries automatically: circulation restriction, nerve damage risk, psychological trauma, while the mother in me wanted to scream until my throat bled. What rules? What could possibly justify this? Talking after lights out, crying, not hiking fast enough when they set the pace, asking for water outside of scheduled times, complaining about pain, saying you wanted to go home. Each rule delivered in that same flat voice, like he was reading from a manual he'd been forced to memorize. They said it was consequences. That pain teaches better than words ever could. That we needed to learn the world wouldn't coddle us. I couldn't breathe. The air in the room had turned solid. "Marcus, I didn't know. I swear on everything I am, I didn't know they would do this to you. Uncle Jonathan did." He looked at me then, finally, and the accusation in his eyes was worse than any scalpel I'd ever held. He visited, twice, in week 2 and week 3. They showed him the restraint area. He watched them demonstrate the zip ties on another kid. He said I needed it, that I was too soft, like you, that we both needed to learn that feelings don't matter, only results. The words hit like a physical blow. Jonathan knew. He'd seen it happening, watched them torture children, and called it therapy. Had paid $28,000 for them to abuse my son. Did he? My voice cracked. Did he pay for this? Yes, I heard them talking about it. The director thanked him for the referral fee. Said he'd sent 4 kids this year. 4 kids. Jonathan had done this to 4 families. For money. So you owe him now, Marcus said quietly. That's how it works, right? He pays, you owe. That's how it's always been with Uncle Jonathan. The statement hung in the air, sharp and true and devastating. Of course, Jonathan never gave anything for free. Every gift had strings. Every favor came with interest. This wasn't help. It was investment. An investment in control, in leverage, in making sure I stayed in debt to him forever. Over the next week, I tried to help Marcus readjust to being home. But it was like living with a ghost of my son. He barely ate, pushing food around his plate in careful, measured movements. He barely spoke unless directly asked a question, and even then his answers were clipped, careful. He jumped at sudden sounds, the doorbell, the phone ringing, my voice raised even slightly in normal conversation. He apologized constantly. For everything. For taking too long in the bathroom. For leaving a dish in the sink. For breathing too loudly. For existing in ways that might inconvenience someone. When I hugged him, trying to give him the physical comfort we'd always shared, he went rigid. Every muscle locked, tolerating the embrace but not participating in it. I made an appointment with Dr. Sarah Chen, a trauma specialist who came highly recommended by a colleague at the hospital. She spent 2 hours with Marcus the first session, just talking, letting him go at his own pace. Then she asked to speak with me privately in her office. "Dr. Carter," she said, her expression grave. "What your son is describing isn't therapy. It's systematic abuse. Prolonged restraint, food and water deprivation, sleep disruption, forced physical exertion past the point of exhaustion, public humiliation as a teaching tool. This program was a torture facility with therapeutic branding. The clinical language made it worse somehow. Can we prosecute? Can we shut them down? It's difficult. These programs operate in legal gray zones, often on private land in states with minimal oversight. They have parents sign extensive waivers. They claim everything is voluntary, that the children can leave at any time, which is technically true but practically impossible when you're a 15-year-old in the middle of wilderness with no phone or resources. She paused. But you can report them. You should report them. Contact the state licensing board. File complaints with Child Protective Services. Speak with a lawyer about civil action. And Dr. Carter, your son is going to need long-term care. What they did to him, the psychological damage, it's significant. I drove home with my hands shaking so hard I had to pull over twice. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching shadows shift as cars passed outside, hearing Marcus's voice in my head on an endless loop. Uncle Jonathan did. He knew, he watched, he paid for it. By morning, the grief had crystallized into something harder, colder, more focused than any surgery I'd ever performed. I started making calls. Jonathan called 3 days later, cheerful as ever, that practiced professional warmth in his voice. Rachel, hey, how's Marcus adjusting? I told you that program works wonders. Total transformation, right? He has PTSD. I kept my voice level, clinical. Night terrors, hypervigilance, severe anxiety. He flinches when I touch him, Elance, then a laugh, short and dismissive. Oh, come on. He's being dramatic. Teenagers exaggerate everything. It's part of their developmental stage. Give him a few weeks to reset. He has bruises from restraints, Jonathan. Scars on his wrists. That's standard practice in wilderness programs. You can't coddle these kids forever, Rachel. Sometimes love looks like discipline. Sometimes it looks harsh from the outside, but it's necessary. He'll thank us later. My throat burned with acid. You knew what they were doing to him. Dr. Chen said you visited twice. I did my due diligence, yes. I wanted to make sure my investment was being used properly. And it was. Everything I saw was appropriate therapeutic intervention. You watched them restrain children with zip ties. I watched them teach consequences. Natural consequences for behavioral disruptions. It's proven methodology. You tortured my son. His voice went cold, all the professional warmth evaporating instantly. I saved him from becoming another statistic. Another weak, emotionally fragile man-child who can't handle the real world. You were raising him to fail, Rachel. I intervened. You should be grateful. The word grateful made something snap inside me. Grateful. Yes. Grateful. And speaking of gratitude, his voice shifted, became casual, pointed, the tone of someone collecting a debt. I covered the program costs. $28,000. Plus travel expenses for my check-in visits. I'm not asking for all of it back. That's what family does. But a contribution would be appropriate. Let's say $15,000. Family helps family, right? That's always been our understanding. There it was. The bill, the leverage. The price of my desperation, now due with interest. I'll think about it, I said carefully. Don't think too long. I've got my own expenses, my own family to support. Payment within 30 days would be ideal. I hung up and immediately started making more calls. The therapist gave me names. Lawyers who specialized in abuse cases, survivors advocates who worked with families destroyed by troubled teen programs. I contacted the state licensing board. I filed complaints with Child Protective Services, Adult Protective Services, the Better Business Bureau, every agency that would listen to me, and I started keeping a file. A detailed, comprehensive surgical file, photos of Marcus's bruises, time-stamped and dated. The therapist's report, 12 pages of clinical assessment. Recordings of Jonathan's phone calls where he admitted knowing about the restraints, admitted watching them being used, admitted considering it appropriate. Copies of the brochures that promised firm but compassionate care while delivering systematic torture. Names and contact information for other families, which I got from a survivors network online. Evidence. Cold, irrefutable, court-ready evidence. Jonathan called again 2 weeks later. His tone had shifted from friendly to cold, from professional to threatening. Rachel, the payment. I need it. I've been patient, but I need that money. I'm not paying you for abusing my son. Abusing? Jesus Christ, you're delusional. I helped you. I stepped in when you couldn't handle your own child. Now you're twisting it into some victim narrative because you can't handle real discipline. The state licensing board disagrees. I filed a formal complaint last week. So did 6 other families whose children attended that program, all of them referred by you. The line went dead silent. I could hear him breathing fast and shallow. You did what? I reported the program, and I named you specifically as a referring agent who witnessed the abuse and allowed it to continue. Who profited from it? You can't, I didn't, that's slander. There are emails, Jonathan. You recommended them to at least 4 other families in the last year. The program director thanked you in writing for your referrals. Your podcast mentions wilderness therapy 12 times. There's a paper trail, and I found it all. His breathing changed, became ragged, panicked. You've made a huge mistake, Rachel. You have no idea what you've just done. I'll destroy you. You'll what? Make a video? Go ahead. I've already documented everything. I have lawyers. I have evidence. I have other families ready to testify. What do you have? A TED Talk and some corporate credentials? Silence. Stay away from my son, I said quietly. Stay away from me. If you contact us again, I'll add harassment to the complaints. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but it felt different than before. Not fear, power. That night, my mother called. I'd been expecting it. Rachel Ann Carter, what have you done? I protected my son. You've humiliated Jonathan. Do you have any idea what this could do to his career? His reputation? He's worked his entire life to build that practice. He was trying to help you, and this is how you repay him? He was trying to make money off traumatized children, Mom. He got paid referral fees. Oh, for heaven's sake, that's just how business works. Everyone networks. You're being deliberately naive. You're destroying this family over a misunderstanding. Marcus is fine. He's always been dramatic, just like you. You're enabling this victim mentality in him. Mom, he was restrained with zip ties. For hours at a time. He has scars. Oh, for God's sake, it's discipline. I spanked you both growing up and you turned out fine. This generation is so fragile, so unable to handle any discomfort. Everything is trauma, everything is abuse. You're teaching Marcus that he can't handle hardship. And that's the real damage here. I wanted to scream. I wanted to explain that hitting and torture weren't the same thing. That discipline and abuse were different. That loving your child meant protecting them from harm, not paying people to harm them. Instead, I said quietly, voice steady as a scalpel, if you contact me again to defend what Jonathan did to Marcus, I will include you in the lawsuit. I will put you on the witness stand and make you explain under oath why you think torture is acceptable. Lawsuit? You're suing your own brother? Your own family? I'm protecting my child. That's what mothers do. Maybe you should have tried it. The words hung in the air like smoke. I heard her sharp intake of breath. You've always been self-righteous, she said, voice shaking with rage. Always thought you were better than us. Smarter, more successful. You've finally shown your true colors, Rachel. You're cruel. You're vindictive. I blocked her number before she could finish the sentence. For 2 weeks after that, it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like a storm building just past the horizon. Marcus was slowly starting to talk again. Not a lot, but sentences instead of words. He was eating a little more, sleeping in shorter bursts instead of the marathon sessions. He'd started drawing again, something he hadn't done since he was 12. Dark sketches at first, all shadows and sharp angles. But progress. Fragile, tentative progress. I'd wake up at night and check on him, standing in his doorway watching him breathe, making sure he was real and safe and still there. Then the email arrived. Subject: The real Dr. Rachel Carter. The sender was an anonymous account. The preview text said, "For your consideration, the public deserves to know the truth." I knew before I clicked that it would be bad. You develop an instinct for catastrophe when you work in trauma surgery. The video was professionally produced, shot in high definition, color corrected, with graphics and title cards. It opened with somber piano music, the kind you hear in memorial services. A title card appeared in clean sans-serif font, "The Dark Side of Medical Excellence, When Doctors Fail Their Own Families." My stomach dropped into free fall. The footage was carefully edited. Clips of me at medical conferences, speaking on panels about trauma care protocols, news interviews where I discussed the hospital's success rates, photos from charity galas where I smiled in evening wear, looking polished and professional, and completely unlike someone whose life was falling apart. Then Jonathan's voice came in, smooth and authoritative, that practiced TED Talk cadence. Dr. Rachel Carter is celebrated for saving lives, lauded as one of Seattle's most skilled trauma surgeons. But at home, she's destroying the most important life in her care. Her son, suffering from severe mental illness, was failed by her negligence. When family tried to intervene, tried to help, she lashed out. Now she's weaponizing false accusations to cover her own guilt, her own inadequacy as a mother. Cut to my mother sitting in her living room, looking smaller and older than I remembered, tearful, sympathetic. She's always been defensive, even as a child. She can't accept criticism. She can't accept that she's not perfect at everything. This is just another example of her refusing to take responsibility. Then Marcus, old footage from a family Christmas dinner 2 years ago, before the depression hit. He looked sullen and withdrawn in the clip, pushing food around his plate while everyone else laughed. Jonathan's voiceover said, "A child crying for help. A mother too busy to notice." Another clip, Marcus saying to someone off camera, "She works all the time. I barely see her." The context was stripped away. He'd been talking about missing me during a particularly brutal surgery schedule, not complaining. But edited like this, it looked like neglect, like abandonment. The video made it look like I'd ignored his suffering. Like the Wilderness program was a desperate intervention by concerned family members. Like my complaints were vengeful lies from a narcissist who couldn't handle being told she was wrong. The final line, delivered over a photo of Marcus looking miserable. Sometimes the people we trust to heal us are the ones who hurt us most. Dr. Carter's colleagues should ask themselves, if she can't save her own son, how can she save yours? It was posted on YouTube, linked on Facebook, shared in medical community forums with captions like "Yikes," "Context matters," and "This is why I don't trust surgeon parents," and "Makes you wonder what really happens in her OR." Within hours, my inbox exploded. Colleagues asking if I was okay, if the accusations were true, if I needed to talk. Hospital administrators requesting immediate meetings to discuss concerns raised by recent media. Patients calling to cancel appointments, their voices apologetic but firm. We just think it might be better to see someone else. My son's trauma, his pain, his private suffering, weaponized into a public relations attack disguised as concern. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, watching the view count climb. 2,000. 5,000. 10,000. My hands were shaking again. This time from pure rage. I called my lawyer, Elizabeth Brennan, a woman I'd met during a medical malpractice case years ago. She was brilliant, ruthless, and exactly who I needed. She watched the video twice, her jaw tightening with each viewing. When it ended, she looked at me. "They just handed us everything we need. This is defamation, clear and documented. They named your company, your hospital, made false statements about your professional competence, and they used your minor son's image without consent. Again, can we stop them? We can file immediately. I'll get an injunction to take the video down within 24 hours. And Rachel?" She leaned forward, eyes sharp. "We're going after them for everything. Medical board complaints against Jonathan for ethics violations. Defamation suits against him and your mother. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Invasion of privacy. They filmed your son without permission and used that footage to damage your career. They just made this very, very easy for us. How long will it take to file? I can have the injunction ready today. To win? These cases take time, but with evidence this clear, we'll move fast. 6 months, maybe less. They'll settle. They won't want this going to trial. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe again. The law, cold and clean and relentless, was finally mine to wield. That night, I sat with Marcus and showed him the video. I had to. He'd see it eventually, hear about it at school, find it online. Better he see it with me where I could explain. We sat on the couch together, my laptop between us. I warned him it would be upsetting. That his uncle had twisted the truth. He watched in silence. When it ended, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, voice steady, "That's not what happened. That's not true. I know, baby. I know. Are they going to win? Are people going to believe them instead of us?" I took his hand, felt his fingers curl around mine. The first time he'd voluntarily held my hand in weeks. Not when the court sees the evidence. Not when your therapist testifies. Not when the other families come forward. Not when they see your wrists, the medical documentation, the recordings where Jonathan admits he knew about the abuse. They can edit a video, Marcus, but they can't edit the truth. And the truth is documented. He leaned against my shoulder, that familiar weight I'd missed so desperately. "I'm sorry you have to do this because of me." "Marcus." I turned to face him, held his face gently in both hands. "Listen to me. I would burn down the world before I let them hurt you again. I would destroy every bridge, every relationship, every connection I have. This isn't your fault. This is me choosing you. Every single time. Forever. You are my son, and that means something. That means everything." Tears slipped down his cheeks. The first tears I'd seen since he came home. "I love you, Mom. I love you more than anything in this world." We sat there together until the light outside faded to darkness. The lawsuit moved faster than I expected. Elizabeth filed the injunction Monday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the video was down, removed by court order. YouTube, Facebook, every platform pulled it within hours. Jonathan tried to claim the video was protected speech, fair commentary on a public figure. But the court saw through it. The malicious intent, the false statements, the exploitation of a minor, the targeted damage to my professional reputation. Discovery was brutal for them. Every email Jonathan had ever sent about the program, every referral fee payment, documentation that he'd received over $15,000 in kickbacks, proof that he'd known about the restraint protocols and had never reported them, violating mandatory reporter laws. The wilderness program folded under the weight of multiple investigations. Turns out they'd been operating without proper licensing for 3 years. Multiple violations of child welfare laws, unsafe staff-to-child ratios, no licensed therapists on staff, just behavioral specialists with weekend certifications. Jonathan had known. He'd known all of it and sent kids there anyway. For money. His psychology license was suspended pending ethics review. His malpractice insurance dropped him. His podcast sponsors pulled out overnight. The TED Talk was removed from the platform, his profile deleted. The consulting contracts dried up instantly. No corporation wanted to be associated with someone accused of child abuse referrals. My mother tried to reconcile once, 3 weeks into the lawsuit. She called from a blocked number I didn't recognize. "Rachel, please. You've destroyed him. Your own brother. He's lost everything. His career, his reputation, his income, over teenage drama. He tortured my child, Mom. That's not drama. That's a crime. That's evil. You were always self-righteous. Always thought you were better than us. Always had to be the hero." "No," I said quietly. "I just finally realized I deserve better than a family that hurts my child. And so does Marcus. We both deserve better than you. If you continue with this lawsuit, you'll never see me again." "Good." The line went silent. Then she said, voice cold, "You'll regret this." "The only thing I regret is not protecting Marcus sooner." I hung up and blocked that number too. Then I changed my number entirely, updated it with the hospital and school, gave it only to people who mattered. 6 months later, Marcus smiled at breakfast. A real smile, not the careful, measured expression he'd worn like armor. Small but genuine, reaching his eyes. He'd started painting, something the new therapist, Dr. Chen, had suggested as a form of expression without words. His room filled with canvases, Dark at first, all blacks and grays and sharp edges, then gradually brighter, blues appearing, then yellows, then, last week, a sunrise. "I think I want to try school again," he said, spreading peanut butter on toast with steady hands. "Maybe part-time at first. See how it goes." I could have cried. Instead, I smiled and said, "Whenever you're ready." "There's no rush. We'll go at your pace." He nodded, taking a bite. "Dr. Chen says I'm making progress. She says I'm resilient. You are. You're the strongest person I know. I learned from you." The lawsuit settled out of court. Jonathan paid $200,000 in damages, signed a non-disclosure agreement, agreed to never work with minors again in any capacity. The money went into a trust for Marcus's future therapy, for college, for whatever he needed to rebuild. I didn't want it. I wanted Jonathan in prison, but the lawyer said civil was faster, more certain. And Marcus needed closure, not years of trials. My mother never contacted me again. I heard through distant relatives that she'd moved to Arizona, closer to her sister. Fine, let her go. A year later, everything looks different. Marcus is 16 now, laughing again. Painting murals in his room, these huge sprawling landscapes full of color and light. Talking about college, maybe art school, maybe therapy so he can help kids like him someday. Dr. Chen says he's doing remarkably well considering. The trauma is there, will always be there, but he's learning to carry it. Learning that what happened to him doesn't define him. Jonathan's career never recovered. Last I heard through the medical community gossip network, he's working insurance adjustments in a small firm outside Spokane. The kind of job that requires no credentials and fewer ethics. His wife left him. His own children, teenagers now, chose to stay with her. The universe has a way of balancing scales. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I went too far. If I was too harsh. If destroying Jonathan's life was justified. Then I remember Marcus's wrists. The bruises, the hollow look in his eyes when he came home. The way he flinched from my touch. The nights he woke up screaming from nightmares about being restrained. And I know I didn't go far enough. Because family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who keeps you safe. Who protects you. Who shows up when it matters. And anyone who hurts my child, anyone who profits from his suffering, isn't family anymore. They're just strangers who happen to know me once. Marcus is upstairs now, music playing, paintbrush moving across canvas. I can hear him humming, actually humming, something he hasn't done in over a year. Alive, healing, safe, mine to protect. Spencer would be proud, I think sometimes. My ex-husband, for all his faults, loved Marcus fiercely. If he'd been here, none of this would have happened. But he wasn't, so I had to be enough for both of us, and I was. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Seattle General. A surgery scheduled for tomorrow, a complex trauma case. A 16-year-old in a car accident. Someone else's child who needs saving, I'll be there. I'll save them if I can, because that's what I do. I save lives, starting with the one that matters most.